Half square triangles are one of the funnest blocks you can make and is one of the basics in any quilty toolbox. So let's dive in. I'm going to show you what notions you need to make 2 at a time half square triangles. Let's dive in. So you don't need a ton of notions for this. You will need a sewing machine, some thread. I normally stitch with 50 weight Aurifil thread in either the color 2021 or the color 2000. Right now loaded in my machine is the 2000. This is the 2021. The 2000 is a little bit beigeier. Really doesn't matter, just go find something that coordinates with the fabric you're going to be using. You're going to need some squares of the exact same size. Here I've got 3-inch squares to start off. You're going to need a quilting ruler, at least a little bit bigger than your starting square size. You'll need a marking tool. I'm using a friction pen, but you could use a Hera marker, you could use a pencil, really it's up to you. You'll need a rotary cutter, a cutting mat, and pins are optional, but if you don't want things to shift on you, then pins can be helpful. Optionally, you can also get a rotating cutting mat. This will be really handy when it comes time to trimming your half square triangles. And speaking of trimming them, you have the option of getting some specialty rulers. This is the Creative Grids 4-in-1 half square triangle ruler. I'll show you how it works. It's super fun and super easy, but you don't need it to trim your triangles. You can do that with just a regular ruler as well. You'll also need an iron and an ironing board. And aside from that, let's dive in. So the first thing that you're going to want to do when it comes to making your half square triangles using the 2 at a time method is grab your 2 starting squares. These are 3-inch squares. I got 2 3-inch squares. And what you're going to do is flip one to the back so that we can mark a diagonal line from corner to corner just on the back of one of them. So I'll go ahead and do that. Once you have the line drawn, you want to place them right sides together, so pretty fabric facing each other. And this is where you can pop a pin in here if you want to prevent things from shifting, or just leave them stacked on top of one another. But at this point, this is what your half square triangles or your squares should be looking like. So you want to stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of those of that drawn line. Let's go do that. Okay, so we're at the sewing machine, and what you want to do is I always like to start by lowering my needle. I find that my machine eats my fabric a little bit less. So what you want to do is line your presser foot up along your drawn line. And for me, I've already measured and I get a scant 1/4 inch from where my needle lands to the edge of my presser foot. So I know that by lining up the raw edge, the edge of my presser foot with that drawn line, I know I'm getting a perfect scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once I'm all set up, what I like to do is take a couple of steps just to know that I'm anchored, and then before I kind of zoom my way through the rest of this line. Once I've done that line, I'm going to cut my threads and I'm going to flip the square so that I now have this side is stitched. Now I need another stitch line. So I'm once again going to lower my needle. I'm going to lower my presser foot, lining it once again along that drawn edge. Cut my threads, and voila, we have our 2 pieces stitched together. Now we need to cut them apart. So to cut your half square triangles apart, what we want to do is actually cut directly on that drawn line. So I like to come in with my ruler, place it right along that edge, and I kind of also look at the tips of my squares so that I know I'm keeping the integrity of my blocks. And then I'm just going to take that cut, and then there you have 2 half square triangles. Perfectly made. What you want to do at this point is press them. So to press your half square triangles, what I like to do is first set my seams. And all that entails is laying your hot iron on top of your stitch line. And then I like to first finger press so that I don't distort the shape of my block. And then I come in with my hot steamy iron and lay that seam flat. Now at this point, you do have the option of coming in with a tailor's clapper and laying that on top and allowing the seam to cool with the tailor's clapper on top. That will help your seam lay super, super flat. It depends on whether you're working with steam or not and how hot your iron is. This may or may not be a necessary step, but if you like your seams to be super, super flat and stay nice and crisply flat, a tailor clapper would be your friend. Once you have your half square triangles pressed, now comes the time to trim them. So to trim your half square triangle using just a regular ruler, what we're going to do is you always want to start by finding the 45-degree line on your ruler. Once you find that, you want to lay it on the 45-degree line of your half square triangle. So what I'm going to do is just bring this up. I lined that 45-degree line up right along the center seam, that 45-degree line of my half square triangle. And what I want to do is I'm going to be trimming this down to 2.5 inches. So our starting square sizes were 3 inches, and we're going to get 2.5 inch half square triangles that are unfinished. They'll finish at 2 inches. So what you want to do is always start by lining up that 45-degree line on the center 45-degree line of your half square triangle, and then take that first cut. So this one, there's not going to be too much to trim. I then rotate my block so that I now have the clean edge at the top. I'm going to find that 45-degree line again. I'm going to place that on the 45 line of my half square triangle block. And what I want to do is now align this, this edge with the clean edge of my half square triangle. So we've already got one line that's been squared up. I'm now going to come in and take off this extra here. And what you're looking for, just so it's clear, we're making these so that the unfinished size is 2.5. So we're trimming to 2.5. And so here's 1, 2, and here's my half mark. And you can see that I've got fabric extending. And then if I come the other way, 1, 2.5, you can see that I've got some fabric extending over here as well. So we've got 2 cuts done. We still have some excess fabric on the other sides. So what I'm going to do is once again rotate it so that I've got my clean edge here, I've got my clean edge here. I'm going to come back to my 45-degree line and put that right on the 45-degree line of my block. Except this time what I'm going to do is shimmy that 45-degree line up to the corner here so that I know I have a nice flush alignment against the 2.5 mark on this side. So we've got a nice clean line here, nice clean line here. I've got some fabric that's extending on this side, and I have some fabric that's extending on this side. So I still have 2 sides to cut, but we're getting there. We're looking good. So I'm going to take my third cut, trim off that excess, and then flip it one more time, line it back up along that 45-degree line. This time making sure that I have a nice clean line here, a nice clean line here on the 2.5 inch, again another clean line on the 2.5, and then I will trim the excess that is extending. And there you have one nicely trimmed up half square triangle. If you want to use a specialty ruler, there's lots of different ones out on the market. This is the Creative Grids 4-in-1. And so because I already have it pressed open, you have the option of trimming while they're still closed. So before you actually press them, you can trim them that way, which reduces the number of cuts you need to make. But just for today's sake, I wanted to show you the consistent method of having them already pressed. And so how this works is the finished size of our half square triangle is going to be 2 inches. So I'm finding the 2-inch mark on the ruler. And what I'm doing is lining up the center line along that 45-degree mark of my half square triangle. So I'm on the 45-degree line, and I can see that on the 2-inch here, I still have fabric that exceeds that needs to be trimmed. So what's nice about having a rotating mat is I can do, with this ruler, I can do 2 cuts at once, and the rotating mat allows me to pivot in a way where I'm constantly, where I can get a better angle to cut my fabric. So cut number 1, and then I spin a little, and I take cut number 2. So once I have those done, I just spin my, move you up a little bit, spin my rotating mat, then reline up that center line along the 45-degree line of my half square triangle block, making sure that the 2 inches now aligned at the very bottom, and I have alignment, no excess fabric, because we've already done those cuts. And now I'm just going to come in and trim the excess from the 2 remaining sides. And there you have 2 half square triangles done using the 2 at a time method and 2 different ways of trimming them up. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about half square triangles using the 2 at a time method, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments down below. I'm always happy to help you out on your quilting journey. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future tutorials. Thanks for joining.